Good afternoon. Is it working? Can you hear me? Good. I want to welcome you to this 47th, 48th, and 49th annual meeting of the Swiss Mennonite Historical or Cultural and Historical Association, being held today here at the First Mennonite Church of Christian in Mound Ridge. We're very grateful that the Christian Church allowed us to use their facilities. We thank you very much, and we hope that we'll make good use of them. We're going to be favored with a bit of devotions and welcome and a musical number by the pastor, Pete Emery. Pete?
First Mennonite Church of Christian, Christian being the name of this neighborhood in the days before Mound Ridge assumed its present metropolitan outlines. Let us pray. Dear God, you have been our refuge before the mountains were brought forth, or ever the earth and the world were made. Give us that sense, that awareness, that in whatever land we are, whatever language we speak, whatever our relationship is with our government and our neighbors, you are God, you are the Lord, and that is our sustenance across generations, across seas, across time. We gather in your name. Amen. I will do 3 short German pieces. The first 2 come from something around the time of the great Mennonite migrations into central Kansas. The first will be a piece by Robert Schumann, Am Leuchten den Sommermorgen. A young man has apparently let a young woman get out of his grasp, and he's despondent and he communes with nature. Nature doesn't quite say, get over it, but it comes somewhat close to that. The second number will be Sonntag by Johannes Brahms, in which a young man has encountered a young woman on their way to church, and he's looking forward to several similar encounters on their way to church in the future. The third piece will be the classic Bach, Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. I'm pleased to have as my accompanist Beverly Hassan. Es fließen und sprechen So hab ich doch die ganze Woche mein Werkes nicht vergehen. I guess I will wait for the pianist to catch up, and we'll start all over again. Sorry. Excitable boy here. We ready? So hab ich doch die ganze Woche das Laken nicht vergehen. Ich sah es in einem Sonntag voll in der Türe stehen, das 1000 schöne Jungfräulein, das 1000 schöne Herzlein wollte
Thank you very much. Be sure and hang around for poppy seed later on. The association bylaws require or request us to meet annually for the purpose of reporting to the membership. Now, there's no provision that I can see in those bylaws for a pandemic. But anyway, this is our first meeting in 3 years, so we didn't do the job that we're supposed to. The reporting shall consist of a review of the organization, their financial condition, a presentation of a budget, election of officers, a review of the programs and efforts of the organization in the past year. Also, all of you out there can present any concerns or new business that you might consider important for the organization to deal with. Madam Secretary, I declare a quorum to exist, and we may conduct business. Now, the past 3 years have been kind of hectic. They've been strange. They've been demanding, sometimes a nightmare, sometimes somewhat exhilarating. You know, I recall, and I think probably all of you do, the fear that gripped us when we all of a sudden were faced with an unknown pandemic, completely defenseless. We couldn't predict the future. We saw some of its effects. Some people rose to the challenge and were selfless. Others rose to the challenge and were ignorant and greedy and hateful. Schmecka, in this time, was forced to mourn the death of 2 board members, Richard Stuckey in 2020 and Deanne Dirksen this past summer of 2022. Caught in the middle of this, all of this, Schmecka tried to move forward. And this year, after a couple of years, we awarded a scholarship for the first time. We kind of broke out of the Frady Cat mold, and we had a banquet, and now we're having the annual meeting. And so I think we're moving forward again. Now, a number of things are on our agenda that I think are rather exciting. And the first of those I'm going to just mention, and Eugene will talk about them a little more in detail. For some time, there's been an interest on the part of all of you, all of us, about developing a place to kind of display our history, a place to put our artifacts and the things that are important to us. And we thought maybe a possibility for doing that would be working with the Boundridge Historical Association. And so we met the boards together a couple of times, and it just became apparent that probably was not a very viable possibility. We are currently exploring the possibility of doing it ourselves, and Eugene will talk a little more about that. Also, an exciting project that's going on is the proposed or the upcoming celebration of our 150th anniversary of the 1874 migration. Danielle Gearing is heading this committee, and she's working on it, and she's gathering ideas, formulating a program that I think you'll find it hard not to love. And Eugene will tell us a little more about this. But I do want to emphasize something that's been going on, and it's kind of a change in philosophy on the part of Schmecka. We have for a number of years, or for the last couple of years, been thinking about changing our concept of membership. We think that if you are a descendant of the 1874 migrants, then you're a member of this organization. You're part of this organization. And so we're kind of moving forward with that thought in mind, that all of the people who by DNA are a part of this organization are in fact, they're part of it. They're part of us. Now, we're working to try to find all of the people. We don't have nearly all of them, and we're trying to find the people who fall into that category, and that's a mammoth task. We'll maybe never accomplish it, but we're working at that. Now, in addition, the fact that you are a member or you're part of the organization, if you have the right DNA, if you want to help the organization, help us to accomplish the things that we're trying to do, then we're also going to need a little bit of your money. And that way you'll become a supporting member. And there won't be dues as we've always known them, but there'll be simply voluntary contributions, and we hope that people will respond positively. Now, I just want to emphasize that we're interested in finding out who the people are and perhaps where they are. I hear frequently, and I think others do as well, I never heard of Schmecca before. I don't know anything about them, and so that's probably a PR problem that we have. But we want to work at that, and that's part of what we're dealing with. As I said, there are thousands of descendants, but the database that we have only has a few hundred. And so our interest is, one, to find out who these people are; two, put them into our database; three, make them part of Schmecca; and four, include them in our mailings and so on. And our hope is that some of them will choose to support us and support our efforts in what we're trying to do. Now, finally, I want to thank you. You as a group have done very well in supporting us, especially through the match day efforts. As many of you know, we've become kind of a part of the Mound Ridge Community Foundation, and it's been a very positive experience for us. The Community Foundation has supported us, you've supported us, and has helped us to accomplish the things and to improve our financial situation just a little bit. I remember when I first, when I first got on the board a number of years ago, every one of the board meetings, we'd spend most of our time talking about what in the heck are we going to do to pay the bills. We don't have to do that anymore. We've gotten to the place where we're able to conduct business and do what we need to do without any problems. I'd like to turn this over to Eugene, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the upcoming anniversary and about the museum project.
Well, this is kind of dangerous. I don't have any prepared remarks, so I'll freehand it as well as I can, but I know the 150-year celebration, that's going to be the 23rd, 24th, and 25th, and on Friday night, Jenny Krabelschrag is going to have a play. She's writing a drama for that night. And on Saturday at the Eden Mennonite Church, there's going to be several, I think 4 hours of seminars, just discussions about the historical perspective and what it's meant, kind of any subject you want that you can visit and participate in. And then on Saturday evening, let me see. Well, and then later on that day, there's an agricultural committee that's going to plant the turkey red wheat this fall and harvest it the old way. And then they're going to have a threshing demonstration on Saturday night near Mound Ridge. In fact, I think right west of the museum, of the present museum. So, and they've got everything pretty well lined up already, so that sounds pretty exciting. And then and Saturday night back at Eden, you're going to get all the Schweitzer ethnic foods, which always sounds good to me. So, I think Daniil, for the most part, has most of the committee chairmen, not all. I know Glenn Gehring is, I don't know if he's here. Yeah, he's back there. He's the agricultural committee, and I think Russ Stuckey, you're on that too. So, and Lynn Kaufman is the foods chair. So we're pretty far. I mean, she's got it organized very well so far. We hope it. The volunteers keep coming. They'll be looking for them. So keep it in mind. As for the museum, we are just getting started with that idea, and we formed a task force, and about 2 weeks ago we got notification from somebody that would help us with this, that the Kansas Commerce Commission is offering, apparently they've got some rescue money, federal rescue money, that the state of Kansas didn't use. I'm doing a little interpreting here that maybe I shouldn't. But anyway, they are offering grants that involve tourism. And we just got notice of this 2 weeks ago. Somebody alerted us to it, and it is a substantial amount of money. It would be a dream come true. So I guess as long as you can dream. I'm in the process of trying to get everything taken care of because the deadline is the 14th of this month. So we can only hope. Our location would be right west of the Mound Ridge Museum, Mound Ridge Association. And I just want to emphasize, that's not a competition or anything. We think it would be beneficial to both, because you go to one, you go to the other. But anyway, it's okay to dream, and right now we're dreaming that maybe that money would come through, because it would certainly take care of the financing if it would. So that's my report.
Are there any questions that anybody has that you'd like to direct toward Eugene? If not, Clayman, we're ready to hear your financial report.
For you is our financial report for the year of 2022. And I'll just kind of hit some of the higher dollar points, and then I'll present the budget. The beginning balance as of January 1, 2022 was $22,081.27. And I still had a membership line and a donation line for that year. And so for membership, we had $1,676.40, and for donations, $1,975. And then the banquet income that we had at Eden Church in October was $2,361.43. And then on disbursements, the mowing and the manicure of our properties last year was $3,150. We pay property insurance of $570. The banquet expense for the food and whatnot was $1,961.84. Then we had offered a scholarship of $1,000. And that left then a balance of December 31, 2022 of $23,054.89. And our operating fund is at the Mid-Kansas Credit Union here in Mount Ridge. Then we have two accounts at the McPherson County Community Foundation. One has a balance of $12,556.32, and then another has a balance of $96,371.54. And we have two small accounts at the Citizen State Bank of Mount Ridge, one with a balance of $1,342.68, and then the other I don't find it. Oh, $4,337.35. And then the two accounts that we have at, I've given that. So that we have then a balance of $169,781.44. That's off of our statement of condition. Then on our budget, since we're not a not-for-profit organization, I try to make the income and the expenses equal. And so for membership and donations, I've budgeted $3,000. Banquet, $2,900. Books and sales, $400. Miscellaneous, $400. And then interest income of $40, with a total income of $6,740. And then for expenses, $1,900. Mowing, $2,700. Property insurance, $570. Electricity, $230. And Schweitzer salt and other printing, $300. Postage and box rent, $150. Scholarship, $100. Honorariums, $100. License, permits, and dues, $75. And then our web service expense, $580, with a total expense of $6,705, with a net income of $35.
Did you present the budget too? Okay. All right, do you have any questions about Clayman's report? Any other questions? Do I hear a motion to accept Clayman's report and the proposed budget? Dave, okay. A second? Help me with your first name, Yunke. yeah. Okay. This past year, we have two board members who, one of them resigned and one of them passed on. Deanne Gearing Dirksen was the Schweitzer Salt editor, and she had 1 year remaining on her term. And after an extensive search, Kathy Kaufman Preheim was appointed to be the new salt editor, and she is going to fill out Deanne's term. The last salt that you got was a product of her efforts. Now, Kathy is a product of this community of Mound Ridge. She assures me that she never went in the pool hall, and I don't know, but anyway, not very many people can say that, I don't think. So anyway, she's going to be a real addition to the board, and we're looking forward to Kathy being on the board. The other person who's filling out a unexpired term, Steve Graber, who was on the board, took a job and felt like he just didn't have time to also do the job and do what the board required, or what he thought the board required. And so he's being replaced, or a 1 year term, by Terry Graber. Now, Terry's right here. You want to stand, please? So, and Kathy, are you back there? Yeah, will you stand so they can see you as well? All right, great. And Terry is going to take Steve Graber's position. I don't think they're relatives, are they? Anyway, Terry grew up in South Dakota in the Freeman area. He's been a businessman. He's been involved in printing and so on, and so he's going to bring some Freeman flavor to the board, as well as some business organization. So we're welcoming those two people on the board. And now to conduct the election, Ron? Yes.
Don't we need to vote on the budget motion?
Pardon?
Don't we need to vote?
Good idea. Good idea. Well, I wouldn't know what I'd do without you in the crowd. You keep your eye on things. Yeah, that we have the motion on the budget, and it's been made and seconded, and I guess I just went on and forgot about the important part is voting. So, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Really didn't need to do it. Okay.
I'll call on Sandy Zerger to come up and give us a presentation of the nominees. Sandy?
As part of the nominating committee, I am going to give you some information about the nominees. But first I have to say that I want to thank Kathy Gehring and Gordon Gehring. Without them, there would be no nominees, let me tell you. They did a lot of hard work. I may need more light than that. I'm getting a little hard to see. Thank you. So we have 3 persons for the board and 1 for editing of the Schweitzer Salt. Carol Kaufman Varan was born, raised, and currently lives in Kingman County. Carol received her bachelor's and master's in education at Emporia State University. She taught accounting and business subjects for 7 years. She then became a licensed abstractor and title insurance agent. She also served as Kingman County Commissioner for 12 years. Her husband, Dale, is a farmer raising wheat and cattle. They have 2 daughters. Michelle lives in Dodge City and teaches geometry at Dodge City High School. She and her husband, Tom Oach, have 1 child and are expecting another. Their other daughter, Meredith, is a pharmacist in Kingman. Jenny Schrog is a lifelong member of the Eden Mennonite Church. Her parents are Maynard and Marlene Crable. Jenny worked in public education for 30 years as a music teacher and as a school counselor. She and her husband have 3 children and 1 grandson. Their oldest is a graduate of Schmecka Scholarship while she attended Bluffton College, or Bluffton University. She now has a master's in sustainability from Chatham University and lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Their middle child currently is a Master of Divinity student at Canadian Mennonite. She lives with her husband and 1-year-old son, whom Jenny is visiting today, so she is not here. Terry Graber was born in Freeman, South Dakota, as Laverne said, and he was raised on a farm with, he says, 1 foot on the farm and 1 foot in my mother Gering's family's print shop, Pine Hill Printery. Working in the family print shop gave him solid background and experience in the business and provided him with an easy career choice. He went from becoming co-owner of a printing business for 18 years and then on the management team of Menno Media, an MC USA, MC Canadian publisher for 23 years. He also spent 45 years in administrative roles in the Mennonite offices in Newton. His interests include history, Mennonite book collecting, and woodworking. He currently is overseeing the Pine Hill printing display at the Freeman Museum. After many years of living away from Freeman, Terry is re-engaging with his birthplace by becoming involved with Schmeckfest. Terry and his wife of 50 years have 2 children, Monty and Allison. Monty and his wife, Hope, live in North Newton and have 3 boys, Nicholas, Ian, and Andrew. Monty teaches social studies at Chisholm Middle School in Newton and classes at McPherson College. Allison and her husband, Julius, also live in North Newton. Allison is an accountant at Ray Roofing. We are delighted that these 3 persons have agreed to join the board. Their many talents and experiences will augment the board's work and vision for the future. Kathy Preheim has agreed to edit the newsletter, Schweitzer Salt. Kathy grew up on a farm north of Mound Ridge. She attended school in the Mound Ridge School District. She graduated from Bethel College and received her master's degree from Wichita State University. She retired after 19 years of teaching 5th grade and part-time curriculum director and 13 years as the full-time curriculum and assessment director in the Peabody-Burns district. She and her husband, Randy, live on a farm east of Peabody. She says she looks forward to working on the Schweitzer Salt while helping others learn about our Swiss Valenian heritage. We are pleased she is willing to do so.
Thank you to the nominating committee, Sandy Zerger, Gordon Gehring, and Kathy Gehring for all of the work they've done to fill this slate for us. I will give opportunity to add names to the existing slate. I should mention that if there is a name given from the group that we trust that you have checked with this person, with this nominee, to see if they will accept the nomination and would be willing to serve. First of all, President for 3-year term, Laverne Stuckey. Are there any other nominations for this position? Hearing none, we'll move on to treasurer for a 3-year term, Rick Crapel. Any other names for this position? Hearing none. For board members, first of all, we have Carol Varan. Any further nominations? Jenny Schrag. Any further nominations? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for a unanimous ballot. Is there a motion for that? I see. Keith? Okay, we have heard that. Is there a second to that? Eugene seconds it. Mr. Chairman, I declare the election closed. The motion has been passed. Let's have a vote on that. All in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Are there any noes? The election has been closed.
I suspect that the reason there were no no's is because whoever says no would be afraid they'd get the job. You know, this morning in church, when the kid story was going on, Roger's wife, Carol, was doing the story, and she brought this song up that she learned, and she asked the congregation if anybody knew that song, put their hands up, and not a soul did. But then they sang it, and a whole bunch of them sang right along with her. So you know, you just never know. I want to underline one thing that Ron said, and that is that the nominating committee had one whale of a job this year. We had lots of years there are hardly any nominees that need to be made, but this year there were quite a few, 5, I guess, new positions, people who left the board for various reasons and needed to be replaced. And I know that they did a lot of hard work, and I, for one, take my hats off to that effort. Thank you very much. I think they deserve a round of applause. Now, many of you in the past have gone with us when we've done a bus tour. We've taken a bus tour 3 or 4 times on a Saturday. We'd go up through Marion and McPherson and parts of Harvey County in this area, and most people found it to be a pretty exciting experience. We want to do a bus tour again. We're not proposing to do one like we did last time, but rather we're going to do what we think is what we're calling the Western Tour, or we're working toward that. And the tour will probably be conducted. The details aren't all worked out yet, but the tour will probably be conducted in late August or early September, likely the first or second Saturday in September. The tour will begin at the Hopefield Church, go south to Burton, past the Alda Mill and the Crittacahannas area there, and continue on to Yoder, Purdy Prairie, Kingman, Pleasant View, and if we have time, maybe point out some things in Hutch and Bueller and Inman. We think it's going to be an interesting tour. We've talked with people. We had this thing on the shelf, ready to go. Fact is, I think it was even announced at the last banquet before, and probably even the last annual meeting before the pandemic. But then the pandemic came and it just couldn't be done. So it was all ready to go, and we haven't really redone it yet. but I don't think it's going to be a big problem. There are going to be some names and faces that will change, but for the most part, I think it will happen. So if you're interested, this is your part, and you need to pay attention, because if you're interested, you need to let us know. We don't know exactly what it's going to cost, but it's not going to be the same price as it was 5 years ago. The bus company that we dealt with told me the other day when I called them, the bus cost us in 2019 or 17, whatever the last year was we went, cost us $900 for a day. He said he'd let us have it for $2,000 this year. So that's a little difference. But I think we can do better than that. But anyway, that's what I was told. So it's going to cost us a little more money. We figure somewhere in the $80 to $100 range for a day per person. So if you're interested, and we hope you are, let us know. And when we get 56 people, the bus is full. And then the recruiting ends. But until that time, there's a possibility. And then there's always people that drop out, and so we have a waiting list, and it works out okay. Anyway, that's the plan. Now, do you have any questions that you want to raise at this point on anything that we've done? This is where the part, remember when I said at the beginning, also the membership may present concerns, new business, and so on. So if there's anything like that, we can do it now. I think this would be a good place where we could inject you, Roger. You wanted to have a minute. You got to be a little careful with Roger. A few months ago, about 3 or 4 months ago, one day I was putting gas in at the Dillon's in Newton, and all of a sudden this voice calls me and says, "Hey, Laverne, I want to talk to you." And I looked around, couldn't figure out who it was, and some guy all bundled up in a winter coat and a cap, and I couldn't tell who he was. He said, "I'm Roger. I want to talk to you about scholarships." Well, I said, "We'll do that someday." And so now when I'm sitting up here, he says, "I want to talk about scholarships today." So you never know what Roger's going to do, but we'll let him have a chance. Go ahead, Roger.
You gotta watch how you talk to at gas stations. I'm Roger Yankee. I'm on the Schmecka Scholarship Committee. The other member of the committee is Kerwin Graber from Freeman, South Dakota. And we are at that time of year where, again, we are sending out information to a variety of sources about the availability of scholarships for this year. And over time, I've been on this committee way too long. I was trying to remember whether it was 20 or 30 years. But, yeah, look at that. Just make sure everybody's clear. To qualify for a scholarship, you need to be either a member in good standing of one of the Swiss Philhelinian historic churches, or be of Swiss Philhelinian descent. In other words, have the right DNA. And then what you can receive funds for is enrollment or acceptance at a Mennonite seminary, which we have expanded the list to include not only Mennonite Biblical Seminary in Elkhart, but also Eastern Mennonite Seminary and Canadian Mennonite Seminary. A couple, 3, 4 years ago, our big scholarship winner was a Mound Ridge person, Swiss to the core, doing pastoral studies and also serving as an assistant pastor up at Canadian Mennonite. Or be in or accepted to and planning to serve in Mennonite voluntary service somewhere, either domestic or abroad, or in a career-related program at a Mennonite college. In other words, maybe some kind of pastoral internship course or something like that, something where you're clearly exploring the possibility of ministry. I assume it comes as no surprise that the number of Schweitzers going to seminary has really dropped off in recent years. In fact, it's been at least 3 or maybe 4 years now, I should have checked before I opened my mouth, where we've even had a seminary student applicant. The last few years, all of our scholarship funds have been going to Mennonite voluntary service students, or in one case of someone who was a senior in college and was in an acceptable course or an interesting course, looking at exploring the possibility of perhaps going into Christian service with their career, or, after they got out of college. What I would like is for those numbers to increase. That's, in my opinion, where you all come in. Let's not forget to encourage our young Schweitzers to maybe explore, experiment, take a look at some kind of church-related, Mennonite-related service, Mennonite-related study, something like that. Just see what happens. Kind of help out, broaden the scope. Last year we had 1 applicant, period. One qualified applicant, had a couple of others that weren't even close to qualifying, but they did say, hey, if you're giving away money, I'll take some. The flip side of getting more applicants is why I stopped you at the pumps. We've pretty much been limited to basically $1,000 total in scholarship grants for each year. The board has made some minor upward, allowances when we had a good year of candidates. That's not much money anymore. If you go back, at the beginning of the scholarship program, which was 40 years ago, I think, something like that. So if we're, I don't know what the answer is. I've talked with Kerwin many times. I've talked with Laverne at the gas station and other places. I've talked with Kathy Gearing. I've talked with others. Do we want to perhaps take a look at upping the possible amount we could grant if we had the right kind of applicants? Or not, just something to that effect. A few years ago, we had 4 qualified applicants, totally qualified, and ended up having to just split it into $250 a piece, which, that's about the gas it takes you to get to Akron for training. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up. The other thing I'll bring up here, and if anybody has any questions, let me know, is if anybody else would like to come on to the scholarship committee, I'd be glad to give you my name, number, fax, and address. Any questions about anything, whatever? So anyway, this is going to be coming out when you see it. Show people, get them excited. But don't get too many, I guess, because we can't pay for it.
Thank you, Roger. The scholarship program is a great program. But it might be that we need to redefine it some. Maybe we need to take a look at it. And it might be something, maybe we'll, some of you that have some concerns and some ideas about it, Or maybe it's a program that's outlived its usefulness. You know, I mean, in this day and age, as Roger says, $1,000 isn't very much. And on the other hand, if you're raising $1,000, it's more of an effort. So it all depends. I mean, there's some considerations there. I don't know, what does it cost to go to school a year? $15,000, $16,000 tuition or more? What? Well, I don't know. Okay, so it.
One thing I forgot to say, you know, if we've got somebody sitting here or somebody out there who really likes things like matching grants, you know, that we can maybe have contact with or access to, if we have a really good pool of applicants, be able to say, you know, here's what we got. We got 1,000 to work with, or maybe 1,500 to work with. Could we talk to you about matching that or something like that? You know, I'm encouraging people to be creative. Let's see what happens.
Okie dokie. Any other questions or comments for Roger? Did you want to say something, Jerry, or, okay. If not, I think we'll bring this business part of this meeting to a close and go to the program part. Now, a while ago, I forgot to call for a vote. I also forgot to line somebody up to do a history of this church, which we normally do when we go somewhere. And I discovered it. I thought I might have still had time to do it, but I thought, well, no, you know, I'm a former member here, and my wife grew up here, so maybe I'll just do it. Tell you a little bit about this church. This church, contrary to what a lot of you might think, was not founded by Swiss Mennonites from Ukraine, but rather was founded by Swiss Mennonites of German descent, people who came from places like Germany, France, and so on, were the founding people of this particular church. These Swiss Mennonites moved to the U.S. in the early 1800s. A lot of them settled in Illinois, Indiana, maybe Ohio, and places like that. And about the same time that our Swiss forebears were coming to the U.S., these people packed up, or some of them packed up and moved here to central Kansas as well. Now they generally had names that were different than the Swiss Mennonites from the Ukraine, but for some of them were the same, and so it was hard to distinguish. But at any rate, they stopped at Halstead, and here they began to settle, and they formed a Mennonite church. Now, being typical good Mennonites, they soon discovered that land was cheaper away from the railroad. And so they moved to the north, and some of them came as far north as we are here because land tended to be a little cheaper. Now, Halstead is about 13 miles straight south, and that's a long way to do business, or for that matter, to attend church. And so, you know, it became kind of a problem. And so there was a little community about a half a mile south of here that formed. It had a blacksmith shop, I think, and maybe a couple of other small little businesses. It formed, and it was named Christian because three of the landowners that it sat on had first names of Christian. At any rate, this community formed, and the people started doing business there, and they formed a church. And so in March 4 of 1877, the first Mennonite Church of Christian was dedicated. An interesting tidbit, at least to me, is that this church dedicated their building before the folks that they the folks that they were a part of in Halstead dedicated theirs. In other words, the Halstead Mother Church didn't have a building, and these people did. It's also interesting to note that people were not of one mind back in pioneer days either. Early in the history of this church, there was a power struggle, and it was headed on each side by an elder. One group ultimately left the church and formed the West Zion Church, which was originally in the south part of town. Now, in the early years, the church grew rapidly. Frequently, it was faced with a space shortage, causing it to be remodeled and rebuilt and enlarged. But as fate would have it, a few years later, the railroad came and established a depot about a mile from the church. It's about a half a mile from here where the original depot would have been. This was pretty much the death of Christian, but a new community, Mound Ridge, began to take shape, and it was chartered in 1877. 20 years later, in 1907, the Christian church decided to move to their building to Mound Ridge. And as the pastor has already said, the building was moved, but the name wasn't changed. And so that's the reason the First Mennonite Church of Christian has a bit of an unusual name. I think the church was moved about to this lot just to the north, if my memory serves me correct, just to the north of this building, between the edge of the building and the street, was where the old church was, and this church was built beside it. I don't think there's ever been any credible discussion about dropping the name Christian from the church. Now, very little was done to the building, a facility, for the next 25 or more years. In the mid-1930s, there was a movement to put a basement under it, but it kind of fizzled. And more people were interested in building a new church. And they were moving in that direction when World War II broke out and put everything on hold. And finally, in 1949, the new church was started, and this building was dedicated November 5, 1950. Now, this beautiful sanctuary and building has largely been untouched since it was originally built near the end of last century. The south wing and an elevator and the entrance were added, and along with a few updates and a little remodeling. The church has been blessed with some long-term pastors. P.P. Weedle was here for about 50 years, and Jim Gingrich was here for pretty much about 20, 25 years at the last part of the last century. Now, the Swiss Bohemians, as they moved and they were settled in the area and they moved out from Hopefield, they became welcomed here. The church was welcoming to them, and so many of them settled here. And so much so that historians kind of have referred to this church as one of the original Swiss Bohemian churches. And so that's a little bit the story of the church, and now we're ready to introduce to you our program for this afternoon. We're very fortunate to have Bertha Lois Preheim be our featured speaker this afternoon. She was born on a farm near Henderson, Nebraska. Lois began her college career at Freeman Junior College and finished it with a BA at University of Nebraska and then ultimately with a PhD. Lois also earned a Master of Divinities degree from Anabaptist Biblical Seminary. In the process, she met Ron. They married and eventually settled on a farm in the Henderson area where they raised crops, cattle, and kids. They have 3 adult children with wives and families. An interesting tidbit, to me at least, is that Ron and Lois hosted, I think it was over 30 MCC exchange students over the years. It's a very memorable, very eye-catching kind of thing. In addition to being a farm assistant, Lois taught school, was a kindergarten through 12 administrator. While in Nebraska, Ron and Lois attended and were active members in the Henderson Mennonite Church. They are currently living in retirement just south of Newton, and they attend Bethel College Church. Ron and Lois are avid travelers. They just returned from a trip to view the Northern Lights, and Ron told me it didn't work. While most of us were kind of waiting wearily for the pandemic to end, Lois was busy researching her newest book. Having ties to the Freeman community, and with Ron being a Schweitzer, of Schweitzer descent, the issue of the January 12, 1888 blizzard was raw and inviting. The effort resulted in a book, Trailing the Children's Blizzard. I found Lois's account fascinating, and I'm looking forward to her presentation today. Without further comment, I'm going to present Lois, Dr. Lois Preheim, and she asked me to tell you that the first item is a video. And so whoever's in charge of the video, we're ready.
Hello, my name is Marnette Hofer, and I am the Executive Director and Archivist at Heritage Hall Museum and Archives in Freeman, South Dakota. And we are here today in one of our historical buildings on our museum complex. This is the Diamond Valley School. It was built in 1884, just a couple miles south of Freeman. And it seemed like an appropriate place to have a discussion with Lois Preheim from Newton, Kansas, about a book that she recently wrote called Trailing the School Children's Blizzard. So welcome, Lois. It's good to have you here. Tell us a bit about how you actually became familiar with the blizzard of 1888, why it's such a memorable storm, and how it is that you chose to actually go ahead and write a book about the story.
Having grown up in Henderson, Nebraska, I was aware of a blizzard story from January 12, 1888. And then when I married into the Freeman community, I had a story from my mother-in-law, late mother-in-law, She had grown up about a fourth of a mile from where the frozen boys were found. And so this story had a very personal effect on me, and I wanted to know more. This blizzard is memorable because it came quickly, and it caught people off guard, and it was during the school time, hence the name, title of the school children's blizzard, and so it affected a lot of children. I was aware of the lack of scope and scale of the blizzard, the entire blizzard, and in doing research this became quite obvious.
I appreciated here in the beginning of the book, you've got a map and you show these 10 communities that you ended up researching that start all the way from Edmonton, Alberta through Saskatchewan and down through the Great Plains states and, like you say, ending in Austin, Texas. So you just kind of chose these based on
I
these
chose them
locations?
for weather patterns and also where I had access to stories.
Sure. So are all the stories that you included, are they based on real people or real events, or how did you kind of come up with the people that you talk about?
Well, where there were real people in the records, I imagined them.
Fleshed it out a bit.
I did.
What drew you to actually writing about this?
The fact that stories within one generation can be lost.
So one of the things that you did was you started each chapter with a poem, which is a very effective way to capture everything in a nutshell. Tell me about that.
Well, I've been writing poems for the grandchildren. I have twin granddaughters, and for each birthday, I write a poem. I thought for this situation, I could write a poem about each chapter through the voice of the child or the mother, and capsulize a story in a poem.
It was a very effective way to kind of give a synopsis of what was happening.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, I really enjoyed, at the end of each chapter you have recipes. Each of these stories you managed to make the characters kind of come to life because you shared their experiences, their feelings, and then their food, which I thought was a really unique idea. I mean, they're real. I mean, we could actually try these at home, right?
Absolutely. Many come from my recipe box.
I see. Yeah, I thought that was really a neat way to tie these all together and make them real to everybody. I guess in conclusion, I would ask, share a bit about what your motivations are and your hopes for this book.
Well, I'm hoping that by sharing these stories, people will be motivated to examine their own capabilities of rising to the challenge of the blizzards in their life, so to speak, and to give them encouragement to figure out a way to conquer what's before them. But primarily, I want to keep the stories going.
Yeah, inspiration from the past.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out to visit with us about this book. It's a wonderful book. Encourage folks to check it out. Trailing the School Children's Blizzard. Thank you.
Well, there you have an overview of the book. And before I get started, I'll pay tribute to the Schweitzers of a broader genre. And it's a book, Apples for Immigrants. And it's a story how the Swiss people in Iowa helped the Low Germans in Henderson, Nebraska in 1874. And if you need a book on generosity in your congregation for a children's story,
Carol Flickner did a wonderful job of doing that in our church, and I know other congregations have used it. So I'll have some downstairs later on, as well as these books. So, as mentioned in this introduction, without information from the weather gurus that we have nationally, this book could not have been written. So I begin each chapter with a report of what the weather situation is. And so then we get a feel for how cold it was and then what happened after. So to get started, I'll have Nicholas, thank you, show this picture, which is, there are 3 books that are really pretty good description of what happened during this time. One is about the Turner County book and resourcing that, what went on in Turner County. And this one of the fellows that made it through the snowstorm has his memory of that and wrote about that in later years, keeping in mind that he was a young fellow at that time. And then my book is in the middle, and then the other one is David Laskin's book. How many of you have read David Laskin's book? Quite a few of you have. It is extremely technical, weather-wise, and so my goal was to have it more accessible for people who weren't really that keen on learning all the technical names of what goes on in the weather. And so you also have written down who those were that experienced the weather at that time. And the 3 families that are listed there, that's what we'll be focusing on. So I'm not going to be focusing on the total book, but figuring that the interest in the Freeman chapter 6, would probably be mostly what you were interested in. So I'll give you just a little bit of a teaser here and there as I go through this chapter. And I begin with Maria. And you'll notice in this book I use women's voices, children's voices, and I want to amplify that because the things that are written down are usually from a male point of view, but knowing what life is all about, that the women in the group and the children, they had feelings, and they had experiences, and so I try to highlight that whenever I have an opportunity. In this video, mention was made that I start each chapter with a poem, which I do. And what it does, it capsulizes what is in that chapter. Just like when I would write poems for my twin granddaughters, I would capsulize what happened in the past year from one year to the next in poetry form, but I would choose a different genre every year just to make them aware of all the possibilities that were out there in poetry. I don't vary the genre. I keep it open-ended. And then I end each one with a recipe. And the one in this chapter, chapter 6, that I ended with is a kuchen recipe. And I based that on the fact that, Ron's mom, Sieglinde Waltner, Preheim, translated her grandpa's diary. And this was when he was in Volhynia. He was writing this diary, and it was written in Gothic German. And so there is, on page 12, Joe's Waltner writes about his mom and dad going to a meeting, but it would be okay because mom was leaving some kuchen for them to eat for the afternoon snack. And so knowing that that was a favorite and all would be well with that comfort food, told me that that has to be the recipe for the end of this chapter. And so it is. And I have ties to what happens in each of the chapters to the kind of munchie that I suggest to them. Okay, here we go. Maria is emphatic. No, she tells her two oldest sons, 9-year-old Peter, and 13-year-old John, you cannot go to school today, and that is final. Well, the calm weather of January 12, 1888 does not feel right to her. There is foreboding in the air. And besides, she says, there is a small, sooty-looking cloud on the horizon. Whenever I have seen that kind of a cloud, a bad storm is brewing. Maria's husband, John, known as John Jake in English, Albrecht, who is more easygoing, feels he needs to guard his sons from Maria's overprotectiveness. He counters, well, I don't see anything wrong with the boys going to school if they want to, my dear Marian. They'll be all right. They are quite grown up, you know. And with the boys' father swaying the decision in favor of them going to school if they want, they decide that John will go and Peter will stay home to please his mother. Well, there were 3 younger siblings in the household, and because there were fewer in this family, in the Albright family, than in the Kaufman family or the Graber family, this family housed the school teacher. Could we have the next slide? As you can see, where the Albrights lived, it's on the east side of the section, and Mr. Cotton is the school teacher. I didn't spend time elaborating on Mr. Cotton's private life. He was married, he had children, and lived somewhere else, but boarded at the Albright family. The other 2 families had that many more children. And so, as you can see by the map, can you go to the previous one? We'll get to this one. No, it must be the one after then. No, try the next one. All right, we'll just take it from here then. The Kaufman family lived, see where the schoolhouse is? And from the schoolhouse, they lived south and then across the road. And the Kaufmans, they had a sad story. When they were coming over on the ship, they had a 1-year-old child that died. And they had buried a 4-year-old son just before they left when they left Volhynia, and they came on the trip. And so that was really sad. So they had a 3-year-old left, and And so when this baby died, it must have been sad having that happen. But then also, the Peter O. Graber family, and they lived from the schoolhouse, they lived north, and they had 7 children. And the mom died after they had lived in America just spring of 75, and they all came in 74. And so the records tell us that 24 days later, Peter married another lady, Susanna, and she wasn't much older than some of the older children were. And in a short time, it seems, they had children, and they had 7 more children by the time 1888 came around. So here was this household of 14 children. And the Kaufman family, they had 7 children. And so here we have all these children that are possibilities of going to a school. But on this particular day, we have record of the children that went to school that day from each of the families. Excuse me. So, John Jake Albrecht was from the Kotusovka in Volhynia province of Russia, and his wife Maria that I talked about, she was from the Horodish, and he was 19 when they got married, and she was 16. And so they were married about 3 years before their firstborn was born, and he was 7.5 months when he died. And 2 more siblings were born, and they died as well at a very young age. They came on the city of Richmond, and when Maria was on this trip, she was pregnant, and 3 days before landing in New York City, she gave birth to a Johann, to John. And this Johann is one of the boys that was in this, we say that they were one of the frozen boys. So, let's fast forward to what happened when they were at school. And Mr. Cotton, the teacher, says that, the weather is getting bad, and what do? And the Kaufman children have been told that they should stay together. They should, if the weather is bad, they should just stay put. And so here they're arguing with their teacher what to do. Well, it seems that the Grabers are living nearby and that they should go there. And so, bottom line is that the teacher's rationale paid out, and they get together and they're going to be leaving. And so they start out in the snow. And when the children start going, the 5 oldest ones seem to be heading in one direction, and the youngest one, finally, one of the Graber boys, Andrew, says, "I need help. I'm stuck. I can't move." And so he calls for his half brother John, and for Peter to help him. And Peter doesn't either hear him or whatever, but John comes and helps, and Mr. Cotton comes. And so the group is then divided into two parts. The children go with Mr. Cotton, the two, and they look for, facing the wind is really, really hard. And as they get lost and they can't see anymore, they're wondering, have we lost our way? What is going on? And then there is a lull in the weather, and they see the saplings that have been planted in their shelter belt, and they instantly know where they are. And this is what is the redeeming factor of having Mr. Cotton and two of the boys saved. And then what happens for the rest of the boys, they start going with the wind, and they change direction. And they go about 2.5 miles. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. And if that makes, I don't know if you can read it. Pardon me? The Gertz place? Yeah. Can you point to where your mom grew up? A little bit lower than the Gertz's place in that same. So it's pretty close. And in this story, there is record that says, that, all right, so the boys are lost. And what did they do? And how did they know where to go? And the family members. And so I spend some time having each of the families decide, where are our children? We don't know where they are, and so they wait till the next morning, and they go to the school. And they ask the teacher, where are our children? And he says that he just doesn't know. He takes them to the place where they lost track of their footprints, and where they stopped to help Andrew, where they went back to help Andrew. And then they have search parties, and they cannot find the boys. They go January 13, which happens to be a Friday, and they go Saturday, and the search party just cannot find these boys. And then Sunday, there is hope that they'll hear from somebody at church. And at that point, then that is when Mr. Gertz has his boys come and tell him he has two boys that are teenagers, 16, and but they said, we don't know who these 5 boys are. They had dusted off the snow, and they just don't know them. So how is that? This is one question that really haunted me of hearing these stories. Why didn't he know who these boys were? Well, if you look at the line of Mr. Gertz is in Marion County, and these boys are from Turner County. They're a different district. They're a different school district, district number 66. And the Gertz family, the boys, they would go to a district, completely different district. So how is it that Gertz didn't know them from church? Well, Gertz is a Low German name, and so he was way at the other south end of the Low German community. And so he didn't know them from church. The boys didn't know them from church nor from school. And so that is why they had no idea who these little children were. But he figured he would go to church that Sunday. And the reason he wasn't in church was because he was at the edge of the Low German community, and to get to church in this snow was just, it was just easier to stay at home. And so then at church, if you can imagine, if you've been in a restaurant anywhere where you're the only one that was speaking a different language and everyone was watching you, well, this happened at church. Went very likely. And so when Mr. Gertz came to the North Church, it was towards the end of the worship service, very likely, and he noticed his neighbor, John Schra, what would have been his name? Anyway, the past pastor, and he was about his age and came as an immigrant about the same time. And so he walked over to, first of all sat in the back, and then when the closing hymn started, then very likely walked to the front to where the previous pastor was and told him just what had happened, what he had seen, and should probably make an announcement. And so he went back and sat down, and he called over the other pastors to make the announcement after the service, which he did. And then this was the first that the three families heard about that. And you can imagine, you hope that they've been found, and yet you hope that they aren't your boys, because that means they would be alive somewhere else. And so as soon as the announcement was made, they went and visited with Mr. Gertz, and they all decided to take their families home and then go to the place where they were, to the site of the frozen boys. And yes, they were. And what I do is I describe what their reaction is, and Peter, the little boy that stayed behind in later years, must have written down some of the oral history and stories of what was said. And it's, let's see if I can find that place. Well, at any rate, then, that is, just like these are like cattle in a field, these frozen children, and just the anguish that they feel, each in their turn. And the Graber father had never experienced the loss of a child. They had 14 children between the two wives. And this was so traumatic, and they helped each other load their frozen children into their sleighs. And then I have what it was like for each of these fathers to bring their frozen children home. And when the Albright family, when John Jake met Maria at the door, she was just, it was just like reliving the burial of their 3 children in Bolinia. They would prepare them in the living room for being buried. And here they were bringing these frozen children into the house. And this was their John, the one that was born on the ship, 13 years ago. And what anguish that was. You know, the older two children that were still at home, you know, they would hang in the background, and the little one, you know, here was little Julius who had turned 1 the Friday after the 12th, and she was planning this big party of mahkun, you know, for the family's treat, and all of this mixed together, and then how, you know, bringing the family or the children to the Graber family. That was traumatic. And then the Kaufman family. They had already buried 3 sons. One in Volenia, the 4-year-old, one on the ship, and then one a year after they had lived in America. Buried 3 sons, and now 3 more sons. And it was just hard. John, the oldest, 16-year-old, he was found with his arm around Elias, the 7-year-old. And the 10-year-old brother, Henry, he was on his knees. Was it from just collapsing, or was he praying? You know, one doesn't know. And these were the frozen postures that were brought to the home. And then what happened, the father was, Mr. Kaufman, was not prepared for it. His wife just did the unthinkable. She started laughing, and she laughed, and she laughed. It was just uncontrollable. And so I had not heard that explained, you know, what it was. And so I got information from a psychologist what kind of a name that had. And it's Anna Kaufman likely experienced a mild response of pseudobulbar effect displacement, a condition that affects the way the brain controls emotions. And this may occur when a person cannot deal directly with a shocking situation. In the case of this tragedy, Anna's emotions overcompensated with an inappropriate response. And in time, as reality set in, so did Anna's acceptance of the tragedy. And so her husband, by the way, Anna was the daughter of this retired pastor. And so everything is linked together, it seems, with this group. And so with all of this tragedy, I go on to explain that Anna's husband, John, died at the age of 45, likely of a broken heart. And so when his wife was going through this really, really difficult time, he needed to take care of a 5-year-old son, Julius. He had a Jonathan, 3, and Emma was 1, and there were funeral services to be prepared for, and it was just really, really difficult time. Well, I think I will leave it at that, and let you, if you choose, these are available in the basement, and I won't read anymore. I think I will just bring this to a close. But one of the things that drove my research was that I would wonder about things. One of the things I wonder about is how do they prepare a grave site in this frozen atmosphere when it's snowy and icy and the ground is so hard. So I'm looking for an oral story of what happens. You know, how do you do that? How do you prepare for a grave site? So. Okay, yeah, the North Church Cemetery. There's a sign there. They were buried in one grave, side by side. So I don't know, I think maybe I'll be available afterwards. The time has gone by quickly. So this is my 5th book that I've written, and I hope you have a chance to enjoy it.
Just make a follow-up comment to what Lois has just shared. Here at the very end, you heard the name Emma as 1 year old. Emma was married then to Rudolph Stuckey, who is from this community. Rudolph is my grandfather. My dad is Martin, grandfather Rudolph married Emma. Have a very close connection to this story because I'm very closely related. Now, we have some other cousins here who are direct descendants. Jim and Stuckey and Jeanette Stuckey are here, so we are Emma's grandchildren. Are there any, is my brother Steve here? Who we got? Yes, that's correct, yes. Okay, so there are some of us here who have pretty close ties to that family of the 3 Kaufman brothers. So just wanted to share that with you, Lois.
I looked at the time and decided just to quit, but there is one slide that I have of the descendants of these 3 families. And if you see a K by them, they have a Kansas connection. They moved to Kansas. And so I think the Albrights don't have any family, but the Grabers and the Kaufmans do. Yeah. They're towards the bottom of their list, so.
You know, that story, I don't have anybody that's related. I don't know, there may be more people in this group that have distant relatives that are a part of that story, but that's quite a story. And I remember as a child growing up, it was, while we didn't have any relationship with these people, except through Uncle Rudolph, it was something I talked about in our family every once in a while. And I think what it brings out and what I think it really says in many ways is that being a pioneer wasn't easy. You know, these people probably, if they had stayed in Bohemia, wouldn't have suffered that particular kind of thing. The truth is they'd have suffered a lot of other things that probably would have been equally unpleasant, but it's fascinating, and of course, you know, we don't think much about snowstorms. I guess if we live in California, we'd think a little more about snowstorms now, but we don't think a lot about snowstorms, and it's been a long time since we've been snowed in. And even when you get a snowstorm, you know, you have big, massive equipment and it pushes the snow off the road and everything, but those kinds of things didn't exist back then, and it just tells you something about what are these immigrant forebears went through to tame this country so that the life that we live could be created. And so I really thank you, Lois, for sharing that with us, and I hope you'll all take a look at her book and buy it. It's a bargain at any price. I don't think she wants $100 for them, but but whatever. How much are you selling the books for? This one is 16. 16? Okay, she's got 16 and 10, so it's a bargain. Get two of them for $30. It's downstairs. Yeah, she'll be right down there to help you. In addition to that, there's a table down there that's got a few books that relate to Shmeka. We've got Jim Crable's book about names of people from Russia, and we've got 2 or 3 other books down there that we still have a supply of, and we need to be moving those because we're going to be getting some new books coming in time for the celebration here in a year or so. So if you have anybody that needs one of those books, or if you need one, why, help yourself. Pay claimant, he's going to take the money. All right, so if you have an interest in going on the Western tour, let us know, let Ron know, let somebody on the board know. That way we can gauge the interest and we can put your name on the list. We need your name, your phone number, and your email. Remember, your heritage made you a member of this group. Your money supports it. We invite you to be a supporting member with gifts of $25, $35, $50 or more, and help us to help the association to achieve the things that it's trying to do. Refreshments have been prepared for you downstairs, and they've asked me to tell you to please use the south stairs going down. The stairs are at the rear. And also there's an elevator in the hallway going to the south if you need an elevator. So please do that. Again, we are very grateful to First Mennonite Church of Christian for hosting us. Thank you very much. We enjoyed coming here, and we're so grateful to you for the use of your facilities. Remember, our next major event will be a banquet sometime this fall. Details are pending. Watch in the salt. Watch your email. You'll get information in those forms. Thanks for coming. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy your refreshments. Have a social time. There's no reason to get out of here right away. But anyway, you're dismissed.